Sometimes real life is stranger than fiction. This is a reality trip with Ben Fama Jr.
Hello, everybody. This is Reality Trip. I am your host, Ben Fama Jr. Thank you guys for joining me today. I've got my special guest host, my wife, Ms. Mesa Fama. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
And we are broadcasting live on Facebook right now at facebook.com/Ben Fama Jr. That's where you can catch us with our comments, our questions, or anything you want to ask us live. But if you're watching us on the rebroadcast, whether it's on Facebook, on YouTube, or the audio version on iTunes or Stitchers, be sure to subscribe and leave some comments there. So I'm really excited about our next guest today. And I think this is a very, very, very important subject because I came across this video in my feed about the importance of science communication. Mm-hmm. And more important, the importance of understanding why science communication is important.
Yes.
So, but I also think we have a problem in our society right now where science is taking a backseat to a lot of illogical thinking, a lot of backlash, a lot of very, I don't know, I don't want to say a bad word about what the type of people are that are out there but just there's a lot of backlash of this anti-science thinking, this anti-science movement. And I feel like a lot of really good people are taking a hard hit based off of this. So I want to get into a video. In fact, the video that I'm talking about, that we're going to talk about today, I'm going to put in the description. So if you guys want to check it out, make sure you check out this video because I thought it was really important. When I first saw it, I was super pissed the fuck off when I saw it. And I was like, we need to bring her on the show. We need to talk about this. But I'm super excited today to talk about it. So my next guest is a Swedish PhD biologist and science communicator living in Berlin, Germany. She's currently running the Dr. Anna's Imaginarium blog and Facebook with over 20,000 followers. So please, with no further ado, please help me welcome to the show, Dr. Anna Zakrisson. How are you, Anna?
Hi, I'm fine, thank you. It's great to be on the show.
Thank you so much for being here. We really do appreciate it. So let's start from the beginning. I want to talk a little bit about the video, the context of the video. But before we get into that, before we get into the meat and the potatoes about that, I wonder if you can get a little bit about your background, just like who you are, how'd you get into science? Tell us a little bit about you.
Okay. Well, I had a father who was extremely interested in the natural world. So he took me everywhere in nature. He took me to his classes that he had at university and schools, and he took me to the chemistry lab. And I know words like potassium and permanganate already as a 5-year-old. So I sort of got that from my parents. I was fascinated by it already as a child, and that never left. Still today, super fascinated like a child. And I just love it. And I feel sad when I think about that there are people who sort of missed out that during the childhood, or maybe they didn't miss out during they missed out during their childhood, but they never discovered it as an adult as well, which is sad. And I think it's unhealthy for society as well. I studied at Cambridge University in the UK for my bachelor and master, and went on to mostly molecular genetics and physiology and signal transduction and so on, and went on to Max Planck where I did plant genetics, and I've also continued during my PhD and PhD. I did marine microbiology. And then I did guest research position. I was at charity for a while with a group doing kidney research, and then I ended up as a VP of content at the company now that doing marketplace stuff for biotech. So that's basically my background. But I'm childishly curious of the world, I think.
Right on, very cool. And so what made you decide that this line? How come maybe not engineering? How come not another form of science? What made you decide, biology in this road?
Well, I think my father was a chemist, a hydrologist actually. So, but to me, I was always so extremely fascinated by the natural world, and particularly I always take that example, but I actually did this as a child. I could sit and stare at my own hand, just being completely fascinated by all these reactions and everything going on in that hand. And also, but the fact is that I am actually aware of that I have a hand. This is it was mind-boggling for me as a child, and it still is. It will never cease to be mind-boggling. It's just pure amazing. And I think that's why I got so caught up in biology, fascinated by living things. Obviously, like everyone, if I think of the universe, I get in awe as well, but there's a different type of awe for me. So this is, it just hit home with me, biology.
Beautiful, beautiful. I think that's one thing that I myself, love about science is there's this mystery to the universe, to ourselves, to why we are and what we do. And that's why I love it. I think there's so much great understanding. I also think there's a lot of misunderstanding that people have when it comes to science, or maybe not understanding the importance of it. For me, when I was younger, I was a fuck off. Like I literally got kicked out of school all the time. I didn't pay attention to anything. I literally didn't value what I value now. And I realized that I missed out a lot on my education.
But couldn't it also been how it was taught? Because I think that even I was bored during biology class during my high school years. Jesus Christ! Like I was incredibly fascinated by this subject, and I almost fell asleep during class. Mm-hmm. And when my father took me into the forest, or we had look at the ants there, what they did, and just had these flowers, these blue flowers in Sweden. When you hold them, when you annoy the ants a little bit and you hold the flower over it changes color from blue to purple, like pH indicator and things like that. It was fascinating, and I get into class and it's super boring, and that makes me sad. So, and I think that, you probably would have become much more interested during school if it had been taught in a different way, or what do you think? Or
yeah, no, I totally agree. And that's funny because we were just talking about that the other day about why it is that like students don't feel this want to learn something that's exciting. Like, is it the teaching? Is it just kids? Is it maybe we're not ready? I don't know what it is, but I do agree. I didn't feel like any of it applied to anything in my life. I don't know, maybe I just like the party. I don't know what the fuck it was, but I love it now. I love learning. Like I can watch a lecture online. I can watch, people like you. I love learning this stuff. So, if I gave you all the power in the world real quick, not to go off on a tangent, but if I gave you all the power in the world, what would you change different about education? How would you get people more interested in science?
Yeah, okay. So if I had an unlimited budget, of course, as well, then I would make sure that I really properly take the kids out of the classroom and actually make them understand, or not understand, but make them see the world around them. And also, for example, just take, stupid example, but take the kids to the ballet and have them calculate the rotation of the ballerinas, or, like what momentum is needed for the ballerina to actually turn. Or like, this is, I work a lot with artists because I think this is how we should actually do science communication, is to do it emotional and to collaborate with artists and to be able to reach people properly. And, I completely lost my track now. But I think it's important that we bring the kids to the things that they might love, and then show them that science is not separated from the arts. It's not separated from us. It's a way it's describing the world.
Right.
It's around us, it's in us, it's everywhere, it's just a language to describe the world. Actually, science is a methodology. So it actually isn't a language to describe the world, but mathematics would be a language to describe the world, and so on and so forth. So I think that is making the link between the things we love and the things we get emotional about, and actually just seeing it as a possibility to be able to understand and describe these things in a more, in a different way. From a different perspective. I think that's what I would do if I had unlimited budget and just all power in the world.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that's the challenge, is trying to figure out, how do we get people to value science? Would it be so far off to say that science is one of the best ways for us to problem solve as well? That's the position I always feel like I try to take, is that when you're trying to figure out why something is the way that it is, and we're trying to solve problems, which I think what most humans have been trying to do since the beginning of time is to solve problems. Yeah. I feel personally that science is the best method we have to understanding how the world works and how to solve problems. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think it's critical, particularly now, that we learn critical thinking. And we need to be able to assess what is good information and bad information. And in order to learn that, scientists are generally quite good at that, because this is what we've been trained to do for 5, 10, 12, 17 years, and science education takes a long, long time. And this is what a lot of people misunderstand as well. They think it's a lot of stuffing facts into you. It's not. It's about learning to think. It's about learning an analytical and critical way of analyzing data. It's about finding errors, spotting the mistakes, spotting the patterns. And I think this is becoming more and more important in this world as well, where, I do a lot of things on social media. And I try to my absolutely best to take my responsibility and post things that are actually fact-checked and correct. But there's so much out there that is just plain fucking bullshit.
Yes.
And a lot of people fall for it, particularly Avocado Wolf.
Oh, Jesus.
That I've seen posted sometimes, and I just it makes me sad to see. And this is why I really wish that people were better trained in seeing this and understanding when bullshit starts and the truth sort of stops. Because it's necessary. It's so necessary now.
So why do you think that right now we're in this position, this very weird, precarious position, especially in America? We're in this anti-science position where we should understand the value of science and how it solves problems and the benefits of having it. Yet, like you said, there's people like David Avocado Wolf out there and a lot of these, conspiracy theory, all these different types of people out there that seem to have bigger audiences than even you and I have. What do you think is
absolutely in the millions?
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
There are 2-3 millions. Mm-hmm. Well, because they are producing and packaging easy to understand emotional messages. And this is what I think scientists can actually do better. We can also be emotional. Work with artists. Do things that that people feel moved by. That people, we need the arts. We need those collaborations. It's so important, because otherwise we are completely helplessly left to these charlatans to spread emotional messages that people will fall for and spread, and they will just multiply like a plague,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I definitely think that.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that we talk about all the time.
Mm-hmm.
My wife's a psychology major. Most of the stuff that I talk about is psychology, even though I love all the sciences. But the thing that I'm always trying to hit home at is the emotional aspect of what connects people to these beliefs. And I think science does a great job of logic and reasoning, and I love that. But I think that what most people are connected to, unfortunately, aren't the facts, even though I wish they were, but they're more connected to their emotional feeling of how they're attached to these ideas and how they're attached to these feelings. And I feel like we need to show, because I think people think that science is this cold, dark, empty, logical space. And I don't believe that at all. In fact, I think when you understand ourselves, our mind, our wants, art, beauty, music, there's so much that goes with it. And the science behind it is just as amazing. But I don't feel like we're getting that messaging out there, or we're trying to, but it's getting inhibited by all this fucking crazy ass Deepak Chopra. And, it drives me crazy. It's my fucking platform. That's what I talk about. But it just seems hard to cut through a lot of that noise. And I know that's one of the things that you're advocating for. So.
Yeah. Have you ever seen this Deepak Chopra quote generator?
Oh, I love it.
Beautiful.
It's one of my most favorite things. If I need to laugh, if I've had a bad day and I'm like, I really just need to laugh right now, I go to the Deepak Chopra little saying generator. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Yeah. Just Google Deepak Chopra and quote generator, and you'll find the most amazing toy that you'll play with at work probably through the rest of the week.
Yes.
Exactly.
It's just venting bullshit, motivational and pseudoscientific crap quotes. Mm-hmm. They often don't even have the correct grammar, but they sound exactly like the quotes you find on Deepak Chopra's site.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing. You can actually, if you put them next to each other, you can actually separate the ones that actually are from him from the ones that are generated by the
bullshit generator. Yeah.
And that's what I tend to notice. When I listen to a lot of people in the spiritual, religious, conspiracy movement, it's a lot of word salad. It's a lot of people who sound like they're saying something, but they're actually not saying anything, And so I think oftentimes people will say, well, what's the problem? It's just my belief. It's just what I want to believe about reality. And so what I want to get into, especially when it comes to this video, is the harm that sometimes that these beliefs actually create. Now, in essence, let's go back to the video that you created. First off, maybe you can explain what your intentions were of creating the original video. Now, you had two videos. You had a video where you're talking about the video. So let's go into the very first video you're talking about, what you did with that, and what caused you to create the second video.
Okay, so a while ago, I made a science-based video on vaccines. And some might argue that my tone might have been a bit snarky in that video, and maybe I agree somewhat to that, absolutely. I was a little bit angry when I made that one because I had experienced some... I live in Berlin, and vaccination rates against measles, the MMR vaccine, has dropped tremendously here. I have children in school. I obviously... I got worried, and I was exposed to almost daily by mostly mothers, school telling me about how awful this vaccine was. Vaccination rates dropped so far that it started to become really dangerous. There were a lot of people being ill in measles, much worse outbreak than it was in the US. There was a 1-year-old child that died. I went to the ER with my daughter for other reasons, and there were measles toilets at the hospital, like toilets where you should go if you have measles so that you don't spread this disease. Measles is so contagious. It's incredibly contagious. So I was mad when I made that video, which might have caused me to have slightly of a snarky tone. But the video starts with telling that, yes, there are side effects to vaccines. Absolutely. Just as there are side effects to Band-Aids, and that there are people with allergic reactions to bananas or whatever, of course there are people who will have adverse reactions. The video starts with that. So I'm not absolutely denying any of that. It was a completely science-based video on vaccinations with a snarky tone. So this has been online for almost a year or maybe a year and a half. And I reposted it, not thinking much of that. And the next morning I woke up and I had a shitstorm on my hands, literally, because I had been featured on an anti-vaccine trolling site. So they flooded to my site, and it basically, I saw the post on the site. I have a screenshot of that, and it was somebody who really called out and saying that, they were going to target me and they were going to go get me, right? I was like, okay, so... woke up and there were hundreds, thousands of messages, notifications on my site. Some of them were sort of just, I don't like your video, or I don't agree with you. Well, no, I can live with I don't agree with you, but, let's talk. But it's a little bit hard to talk when you have thousands of notifications because you just don't know where to start, okay? Some of them were... shut up, you stupid bitch, or go die, you whore, or there were a lot of people targeting my shoes as well. I have a pair of high heel shoes on my cover photo, probably also because I know I'll be targeted by it, because it really sort of is a bit of a commentary on that as well. So I was prepared for it, absolutely, but don't go after my shoes. That was the limit. But then one of my followers actually said, I should call them sort of it's not my high heels or they call them the prostitute shoes, but it's actually my biology shoes, my biology boots. That's what he called them. So, yeah. But anyway, so that was the story. So after the shitstorm lasted for about a week, 2 weeks or something like that. And I did my best to answer whatever reasonable questions I got. But after a while, I started to feel a bit like I was fed up with being called a whore or getting private messages asking, Anna, do you have children? ... and things like that, like covered up threats and stuff like that. And that's when I started, well, you can all go fuck yourself, basically. And then I had a few days where I just like, okay, I'm not even going to comment or do anything because I'm too angry right now. Then I started to feel a bit like, okay, well, this is the absolutely worst reaction I can have, because there are so many people out there that are asking valid questions around vaccinations. And we should never stop that, because once we stop that, it sounds like we're hiding something. And when it seems like we're hiding something, people will start making up, big conspiracy theories, even though it could be that you're just tired of being called a whore, But people will make a big conspiracy theory about it anyway. So after a few days, I decided to, when I calmed down a bit as well, I started to count. They flooded in as well to rate my page with a 1 star instead of, because I have this rating thing up on my site. So I went down from like 4.9 to like really low like rating. So I posted I did a post on my site just asking if people would do me the favor to just maybe rate my site so that the ratings go up a bit, because I would really like to keep them there and not completely deactivate that function. Mm-hmm. And then there was a flood of people coming to the site from all directions. And I got 1,400 ratings coming in, giving a 5-star rating on my site. And
nice.
And it was amazing. I was just completely lost for words. And not only that, but people had really taken their time to actually write with these ratings as well. You know, most people, I would just probably click and then leave. But there were long, really long explanations of why they were giving the rating and so on. So I made the effort of going through every single one of those ratings and try to answer when there were texts as well, which it took me another couple of days to do because there were so many of them. And then I started to calm down and realize that the people who come to the site and created so much havoc, there were 30 individuals max. I have 21,000 individuals on my site and 1,400 reviews that were 5-star. This put it in a perspective for me. There were a few individuals that were extremely outspoken and frankly nasty. And there were so few. There were so few, but they were so loud. And this is when I realized, okay, we can't stop communicating just because we're being confronted with this handful of lunatics, because they happen to have a lot of time on their hands and they can spend a lot of time on Facebook and creating so much havoc, basically. So we need to keep communicating, and we should never stop doing that. And this is why this was a really long explanation. Sorry about that. But this is when I decided to make this other video, just basically calling out for people to continue to listen to each other and not ceasing to communicating. Like both scientists as well, because it's easy to just go, well, you know, go fuck yourself, you know, don't call me a whore, like, fuck you, you know. But we shouldn't do that. We should really try to not do that, because most of these people, they have valid questions. I mean, how on earth should they know if they don't have a long education in science? And every single woman or dad, I mean, it's mostly, to be honest, it's mostly mothers in my experience. But there's a lot of men out there as well. But how on earth should they know if all the surrounding is saying one thing and then there's some scientist on a page saying another thing? Of course they're going to be confused. So, and if I start reacting aggressively towards them because some troll has been attacking me a week earlier, it's the worst thing that can happen. It's the absolutely worst thing that can happen, because it's going to just make them even more convinced that the scientist is wrong, basically, and this pseudoscientific crap that is spreading is right. So we shouldn't polarize like that. We need to be careful with that, absolutely. So this is why I made this second video, basically.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely hard. When you're just talking about the ratings, you just brought up something that happened to us, not on the same scale, of course, but when we released our documentary, Reasons to Believe, on Amazon, we started getting all these 1-star from people that are just like, oh, this is hypocritical. Like, not even really good feedback. I always try to tell people, look, don't be afraid to listen to a different point of view. Like, listen to what people have to say. But at the same time, I feel like there's people that don't even want to change their mind. And what I was worried about was, I don't care if I get criticism. I literally don't care. But when you start dropping ratings down where people need to see something and you're just flooding it with this is what I don't like about the rating system either. It doesn't really, I don't know what the solution is to it, but I do agree with being able to communicate effectively. And I'm the type of person, I get pissed off very easily about this, but I try to maintain a balance of, okay, there's people that genuinely have, like you said, they genuinely have questions, and I think we need to have an honest discussion and talk to those people. And I'm all about that. I don't know everything. That's why I talk to people, like I said, smarter than me. I don't, you know. But at the same time, I also feel like there's people that no matter how nice you are to them, no matter how much they're just like, this is what I'm going to stick with. I don't give a shit about you. And so I'm trying to figure out what that balance is between like not giving a fuck and being like, I can't waste my time with these people, and then the people that are like, hey, I just don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
That is the big question, the $1 million question. I had a rule for myself that my goal was to never ban anyone from my site, ever. Because I wanted it to be a site where people could come, they could ask whatever questions they wanted. I might not have time to answer them personally, and particularly now with so many followers, it's impossible. I can't, right? But I wanted people to feel like, okay, just because I have a deviant opinion in this matter, it's fine. You know, I can still stay, you know, we can have a discussion around it. But when people actually start threatening you or being problematic in that way, I had to draw a line. So I have banned around 30 people, and I did it very reluctantly. And I didn't actually do it when the comments came first. And it took me maybe 2-3 days before I actually decided to ban them properly. But it's really, really hard, because sometimes also when things come up and I might be tired from work, I might be tired, and I don't want to deal with this. It's just so easy, just like, I just got to ban, you know, and then I won't have to deal with this. Of course, that is extremely tempting sometimes. But on the other hand, I feel a bit like if I get really annoyed by something and they are not being straight out rude, what is it in me that is reacting? Am I the one sitting now with a preconceived idea, or am I being, because the brain likes slipping into old patterns. So if I'm coming home from work and I'm tired, and obviously sometimes I can just be tired of explaining the same thing again with the same evidence that's been there for like decades and people still won't get it, that's one thing. But sometimes I catch myself with questions from people that just be like, stupid person, you know, but sometimes it actually is that I actually have to go and revisit the evidence and make sure that I fully understand it.
Right.
And also make sure that, you know, because sometimes these people, particularly with very naive questions, really like poke you with some sort of stick, you know, that you really have to, okay, well, what? Hang on one second. You know, you realize that you might have built the whole castle on some sort of, just the base is just not very sound. And when they start poking at the base, it's annoying and it's tiring, and you want to just run away from that discussion sometimes, because it's the worst thing in the world is obviously admitting that, okay, I might have been wrong, but that is a job description of a scientist. And you have to just sort of face that.
Right.
But it's hard. It's very hard sometimes.
You know, one of the things that when we went to Portland to screen our film, one of the people that are in our film, he's a philosopher named Peter Boghossian. And I was sitting, when we were having dinner with him, I mentioned the same thing about arguing with people or, you know, debating people on Facebook. And I tend to do this all the time. I go around all the internet thinking I'm going to save the world. I don't know what the fuck I'm thinking. But what I started doing is not doing it as much. And it's because of one of the things that he said, and I thought it was really poignant. He says, don't debate people, make content. And what he meant by that is instead of debating these personal, interpersonal arguments, making videos, making books, like, so take the argument. So it's funny because if you look at it from a video production standpoint, you know, I have a video marketing production company here in Arizona. People make videos for frequently asked questions all the time. That way they're not wasting time over and over and over. And I'm sure that's what you do too. Yeah. So I usually just, I think making a video or making content that you can point people to can save a lot of time, saying, hey, that's a great question. Check out this video, you know? So we're not, because I'm the same way. I get really angry. I'm in the moment. I'm stressed out. I got other shit on my mind. But in fact, making even this film, I just wanted to direct people to somewhere, say, hey, that's a great question. Go check this out. And if they don't, that's on them. But at least I'm not wasting any more time on the argument to there. What are some of your thoughts?
Well, some of my thoughts, what I wanted to comment on a few minutes ago in regards to her, the second video that you made after the threats and things like that. I think you did a really good job of humanizing science, and I think that you're welcome. It really, like, literally, as I was watching you, I was angry and I was sad and I was crying and I was like, this like you said, this has to stop. Things like this have to stop, because we're humans trying to communicate, and that's really what all of this comes down to, is communication with people who either it's willful ignorance or just are ignorant because no one has ever sat with them long enough to say, hey, this is actually how this works, you know? And I think that you taking the platform that you're on right now are doing such a phenomenal job at that. And allowing
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And you're allowing your patience to show through. And you're so right when you say that that is how we should address people. I mean, it's fine to get mad. I think we are allowed our anger when people are confrontational or they're, you know, just come at us with really ridiculous notions. Like you said, there's some things out there where I'm just like, okay, guys, just you need to stop. There's plenty of evidence to support things like global warming, stuff like that, and people continue to challenge.
Or flat Earth. That's my recent favorite.
Yes.
Yeah, don't get me started.
Oh my gosh. We could.
I can't even be
no,
nice. That's
no,
the problem.
no,
That's the one topic where I
right.
can't even be nice. You're fucking idiots.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that. I know this
It's
worst
okay.
science
No, it's
communication
okay.
ever, but this is just idiocy.
Yes, that's complete lunacy to me.
but
There's
if we-
something wrong. There's something wrong with people.
But if we
right
can't
now.
say something is okay, I'm gonna. This is a show called Reality Trip. I'm gonna be fucking real here. I usually ask people, what do you consider something to be fucking stupid? Okay,
Yeah.
I don't think. The good majority, 80% of the people who don't understand science, I don't think is stupid. I think they just don't know. There's all things that we don't know. So 80% of the people, I am okay that they don't know something as long as they're, you know, willing to learn to do something. But there is a percentage of people out there who act like they fucking know, who act like they're gonna just keep doing whatever the fuck, no matter how nice you are, no matter what you're doing to them. And that's the problem. Now, do we waste our time with those people? This is going back to the $1 million question. Should we? But how should we communicate in a way? Because I felt like science was much, maybe this is just my perception, I felt like science was much more valued before. Like Neil deGrasse Tyson talked about this in one of his videos, how it seemed like we had a value to science, but for whatever reason in the last 10, 20 years, a lot of it's gone out the window. And I'm just trying to figure out, well, what's going wrong? I know I can't change a lot of people's minds, but what could we do better to start communicating and start getting that value and the benefit of what science is?
My thought is skeptic. I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I feel like there's a skepticism that was implanted somewhere. And that is what has created the anti-science movement. I can't figure out where the skepticism came from, but there's this little implant of people going, well, but I'm just being skeptical. I'm just asking questions. I'm just being skeptical. So while we love skepticism and skepticism is valid, right. I think that's kind of where it started, the anti-science. I don't know. What do you think, Anna?
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing of being skeptical, but if one is not capable of understanding the evidence, what's the point of being skeptical around it? I mean, it's good to question, but it was a really interesting article that's called "The Death of Expertise." I can't actually remember from which, if it was the New York Times, so I can't really remember, but it really spoke about, you know, that opinions had become just as much value as expert advice. And they also speak about, you know, of course, experts can be wrong. Of course. But most of the time, it's actually a hell of a lot better than Googling for a couple of minutes and think you're an expert. You know, famous Mount Stupid. Mount Stupid is basically the place where you end up, where you have a little bit of knowledge and a very high esteem of your knowledge, your actual knowledge of the question, of the matter. So there's a lot of people on social media that are sitting very mightily high on Mount Stupid, and they can make nice memes, and they're easily digestible, and they spread a lot around the world. And so we get a spread of strange ideas very, very fast. And because they're often they're easy to accept, because it's a bit like this shill accusations that I will get a lot. You know, just because I am a biologist or I'm a PhD biologist, I might not agree with that you are telling me that homeopathy works. I might say, okay, or I will say it doesn't work because there is enough evidence to show that it doesn't work. But then I will always get the accusation, well, you're paid by big pharma, or you're a shill, or, you know, whatever other accusations, or a big conspiracy theory, bubbling up around that. And it's really hard for me then to be in a position of saying like, well, if I say, no, I'm not a shill, it's just taken as more evidence that I am one, you know, and so on and so forth. I could even send them my bank accounts, but it wouldn't change their opinion around that. It's just so cemented into this sort of like, I have just made this decision, and anything that disturbs that view of the world will basically be labeled as explained by some sort of weird mystical force or organization or whatever conspiracy around that. And obviously it's a bit like this candle teapot example, you know, like this teapot that is circulating Venus. You know, I can't prove it exists or it doesn't exist, but you know what should I do? The likelihood is very low that it's there. But to these people, there's like they see candle teapots everywhere,
right?
And it's not something that I can or cannot prove to them. You know, they will just see whatever they want to see around that. So it's not possible really to argue around that. And their opinions are basically as much value as anyone with an expert opinion. And how expert opinions became so low valued, that I don't know why that happened. And I think that's a really critical point that we have to have a good look at. What happened? Did somebody were we too what do you say, like aggressive or talking down at people, or did you know what happened? What went wrong? You know, because obviously scientists or communicators did something wrong. I mean, it's not only social media's fault, you know, something went wrong on the other side as well. So we need to have a good look at that, what went wrong. And I don't know.
You know, that's a good question.
What are
I don't know whether or not if it's science that didn't communicate it, or if it just because we live, like you were saying, in these echo chambers that now you can basically find anything you want to confirm and leave everything out more than ever. And I've even said this before about our quick impulsive reaction to things. Like we now have the ability to say whatever we want whenever we want. We can comment on any video, anywhere, any blog. And I feel like people feel like their opinions actually matter more than the facts. So it's like, oh, I'm going to say whatever I feel at that moment. And this is what you see on the online, people just arguing about anything. Like literally, we live in an outrage culture. And we said this in a podcast a while ago. I actually did a test with my wife. I said, go to any YouTube video out there for something that just probably you wouldn't think anyone argues about, and they do. I literally pulled up lawnmowers and people were arguing about fucking lawnmowers. So, you know what I'm saying? So it's not I don't think it's just science. I think people are, there's this rage that's been going on in society, you know, where we're just arguing about shit. And I think people believe that because they have an opinion and it can be heard now, that they think that's valid. And so when there's an echo chamber that supports whatever the fuck they want to think, they're like, I don't want to hear that. And that's part of our cognitive biases. I don't know if that's the whole case. I just think that's a small part of this with the algorithms, with the, you know, the whole seeing only what we want to see and not challenging that. The question is that even if that is or isn't the case, the question I always have, and for someone who I used to believe in conspiracy theories. I used to believe in all this crazy shit, and I don't anymore. I tried to ask myself, well, what was the difference? How did I get out of it? And I think I just had a genuine curiosity to wanting to know if something is true. I think it's a scientific endeavor, even though I'm not a scientist, right? It's saying, how do I know this to be true? If this claim is what it is, and that's what I was trying to do, how do I know that this is true? What is the evidence to support it? And when I realized after a while that there really wasn't evidence to support it, I changed my mind. But I had a curiosity. There wasn't somebody else telling me. There wasn't somebody mad at me. There wasn't whatever.
That's a tough thing to do. Very few people can do that.
And that's maybe what I don't understand. Maybe that's where I feel like I have a disconnect from people that don't, because like I said, I believed all these other things, but when I started to really want to find out the truth about them and really dig deep, that's what I don't understand is why do you stop here? Whoa, cut your microphone in half. So why do you stop here? And then but I don't think people understand the actual scientific method. I think they say science is a religion, science is this. I said, no,
science is a belief system that we often speak about. And this is, I've been guilty of that too. I don't know if you noticed in the beginning, I said, I talked about science and I had to correct myself and saying science is a method because science is a methodology. It's not the belief system. It's not anything. It's about picking up balls out of a bag and you pick up 5 balls, all of them are blue, and you say, okay, it's very high likelihood that the balls are blue in the bag. I know I have 10 balls, 5 of them seems to be blue. But it obviously can be, you keep on picking, and then in the end you do a statistics on it and you make some sort of likelihood. That's basically science. It's not a belief system. It's just basically testing. You observe, you test, and you write it down. And that's basically, I can't remember who said it, but I think it was one of the Mythbusters that said that writing down is the only thing, it's the only difference between messing around and doing science. And it's true. It's just about writing it down and doing an analysis and statistics on it, and then you can draw conclusions from of the world around you. That is science, And it's not about believing in it or not. It's just observation. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those observations and statistics can go a bit wrong and things. It's not fail proof, because obviously you just do a prediction of what is likely, but people don't understand likelihoods as well. They don't really understand statistics. And this is something I think should be compulsory in school as well, to have like a knowledge of basic statistics, because I think it's so important in order to understand how these things work.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree with that. Part of my degree process is a majority of it was taking stats and having to understand the science of the mind. I wanted to say, I wonder if a part of me has been hypothesizing while you've been going back and forth about people and their feeling of instability recently in the last couple of years, and that creating them the ability to see patterns where patterns aren't likely. And so that's why we've seen the uptick in people believing in conspiracy theories, and now we have a conspiracy theory president. But I feel like it's because everyone is viewing the world as completely unstable. And I wanted to kind of show that to you in regards to how you've grown out of the conspiracy theory mindset and things like that. It seems like as you've done that, it's, maybe it's just correlation with your life becoming more stable. Like for the last 7 years, you've become more stable. So the more grounded you are, the less likely you are to believe in these irrational things.
That's a very good point. I think it's a very good point, because I can take an example of that myself with 2 examples. I'm a scientist. I have grown up in a family that really valued skepticism and, being critical about things. When my daughter was born, I became hysterically afraid of a few things. Mm-hmm. It was my first child. I didn't know what I did. It was 3 weeks into my PhD where I realized that I was pregnant. Oh. So I had, it was a tough situation, right? Mm-hmm. And moved to a different country recently, and the financial situation was terrible. And I was very worried of doing things wrong. We had so little money as well. But I felt guilty about not being able to buy or do the things that the moms did with a lot of money, or with the possibilities. So I bought into a lot of crap then, even though I'm literally probably the most skeptical person in that surrounding normally, and but I was too scared and too worried. And as you said, it was an unstable situation. A second thing where I've fallen for a lot of pseudoscience crap, I have endometriosis, which is an illness that affects mostly only women. And it basically creates like a lot of benign tumors that you have to take other like hormonal therapies, or you have to have surgery. Not everyone has to have that, but for me it was, it was quite tough at times. And when I just got my diagnosis, I joined a patient group. And oh my God, I literally, I started believing in all sorts of shit. Because I lived with chronic pain every day. Mm-hmm. So, and the doctors basically said, okay, there's no cure. You're an idiot if you don't take your hormonal medication that basically will make you depressed. Mm-hmm. So I was desperate And a lot of people, and particularly if you live with chronic pain, you are desperate. And whatever is there that you can hold on and believe to, and actually you find a community that understands and that listens and does everything that school medicine did not do for me. Okay, school medicine made surgery on me, made me enough fertile to have a child, actually gave me a hormonal coil now, which means that I live virtually pain-free. Have good days and bad days, but thank you, school medicine, for fucking saving my life. But I was still in chronic pain back then, and obviously I couldn't step back and say, okay, well, medicine actually did this for me, because the doctors were very, very overworked, and they just simply couldn't give me that care and understanding that I so much craved, and some of them were simply just assholes, complete assholes. I woke up directly after my surgery. I didn't even know what illness I had when I came in, and the doctor comes up to me. I'm still completely drugged, and to say, yeah, and by the way, you probably can't have babies. Go into this room after, like, when you wake up, and you can collect your stuff and go home, basically. But it was that way. So if you're in a situation like that, it doesn't matter how well trained your brain is in just being skeptical, because you need something, you need a group, you need understanding, and you need people who listen to you. And I think that is probably the greatest failure of what healthcare is set up like that now, because the people giving understanding and giving time and giving all that are the people who also peddle quacks, basically, and they peddle woo and bullshit. So, but they give the understanding, and that can also have a value. The problem is, and this is what the argument I often get as well and struggle a little bit with, because they say, okay, well, if people actually can get that understanding and care, and what's the damage and what's the harm? But it does harm, because people start believing that homeopathy can treat HIV and whatnot. So it is a great harm. But I also understand this part where people are craving some more understanding from the doctors or some more time, but we don't have enough money in the healthcare system to do that. I mean, I live in a country where we have publicly funded health. It's an extremely amazing healthcare system here in Germany. Unbelievable. Also in Sweden, where I'm from, public health, I can go to the doctor. I have all my surgeries. Everything has been for free. I just pay for it through my taxes. It's amazing, right? But doctors don't have time to sit and talk to me for 2 hours about how much pain I have, or what can I do about it, and so on and so forth. So it's not strange that people fall for these things. Even the most clever people can do that, because if you're vulnerable enough, you can fall for it. Absolutely.
I saw a documentary that brought up that exact point, where maybe it was Richard Dawkins that made the doc. I don't remember who it was, but they basically went to these homeopathy doctors and talked to the people, and they said the exact same thing, is that they feel like they're being heard, they're being understood, they're being listened to. And I really believe, this is just my own thoughts, and I don't have the evidence behind it. It's just my hypothesis that exactly what you're saying is the problem. Everything is so logical and reason, which it should be, but there's no emotional aspect to the well-being. This is one of my biggest platforms, is especially because I'm into psychology. Most of my films are psychology related, if you think about it. Most of these thought leaders that are out there, a lot of the Deepak Chopras and the Tony Robbins, even though I like Tony Robbins, even though there's some things I don't agree with what he says, they tap into the emotional well-being of people, and that's what they're wanting. And when people say, well, then what's the harm? I feel better. I'm like, but if you're likely to believe one thing, you're likely to believe others. And that's the biggest problem I have. I just had that listening to this this other documentary about this new thought movement that's been going over the years. It's basically spiritualism saying that if you just use your mind, you can heal your body. So it's one thing to say, I want to feel love, I want to feel important. We all want to feel this way. But then they started getting into medical claims about reality and saying, I can cure cancer, I can get blindness. And that's what I'm saying, is that little belief is going to lead you to possibly believe other things that may not actually be true. And I think that's the challenge in science, is how do we give people that, because I believe that science has a better way of dealing with these emotional problems just as much as chemistry or the universe. I think science has a way of getting people to understand their own emotional well-being. The question is that how do we communicate to people in a way that they understand the value of that, and that there's better ways of solving problems, going back to solving problems. How do we communicate that better?
Yeah, it's a tough one, but what I'm trying to do on my part is I don't really have much political power or anything like that, but as I said, to work with artists and to make sure that you do emotional communication, I think is basically the one of the ways to go. I mean, I'm not saying it's the way, but one of the ways, and I think it's not one solution to this, but it's one solution. But I think one thing that is really, really important is that we have a discussion around the healthcare system. And also, I mean, this also involves, it opens a whole can of worms regarding like how the pharma industry is also allowed to act within the sphere of medicine, which is also extremely troublesome and problematic and leads to a lot of extrapolations by people, like, you know, just because there are the pharma industry is really problematic from many perspectives, is also really wonderful from many perspectives. They gave me a pain-free life, basically. So it's a complex issue, but what we shouldn't do is extrapolate from it, and that's what a lot of people do. But we need to start discussing around medicine openly and clearly to people. And I think also from a scientific perspective, we need to really clearly acknowledge where there are failures in the system and where we need to improve. As right now, I think the scientific system where it's extremely separated, the academic system is really, really separate from everything else, and how it functions and how you get rated on what you publish and where you publish, and, you know, and you're sort of stuck in a system that is set in place in a sort of Victorian way. And you know that if you don't play the game, you're out of a job, basically. So nobody really has any incentive to change it from within. And once you finally get to a position where you could change things, you're actually one of the winners of the system. So you have no incentive to change it. So that's also the case with a lot of things like publishing negative results and doing a lot of things like that would actually help science a lot. But there are inherent flaws in the system, and we need to sit and openly acknowledge and discuss these problems, because they are huge problems and they are not doing science a favor at all if we keep just pushing them away or not discussing them. And I think that one of my absolute heroes, Ben Goldacre, discusses this in 2 books. The first one's called Bad Science, where he mostly attacks quacks, particularly Andrew Wakefield and the lot. But he also really, really takes up the pharma industry in an extremely critical book called Bad Pharma, and really talks about, you know, how we need to start publishing negative results and so on and so forth to actually show that medications actually work. Because some of these medications that are actually allowed are really, like, you know, you can't really find the science on them online because they're, you know, the publications are basically hidden, or, you know, you don't know how many negative results are actually hidden beforehand and so on and so forth. So we need to discuss this, because otherwise people are going to take that, they're going to extrapolate, and they're going to think that all scientists are like that, even the ones that are publicly funded or whatnot. So that's something we need to just make sure that people understand, and they can differentiate between science and science, basically. And, you know, these predatory journals that pop up as well, I think that we need to discuss that openly.
I totally agree.
I agree as well. I think I wanted to ask you, here in the States, we're heavily marketed to in terms of drugs and things like that. Like almost every other commercial is some sort of medication saying, oh, you need this for whatever's ailing you, whether it's sleep or depression. Those are the 2 biggest things that are constantly marketed to us. Do you experience that over there in where you are in Germany?
Not so much, actually. I don't really know about the legal situation in Germany, but I know at least in Sweden, when I lived there, commercials from pharma industry was forbidden, basically. I think it was like commercials targeted to children, or from the pharma industry was legally forbidden. That meant that, you know, obviously they could still make commercials of medications that are not prescription medication, like normal painkillers. I see there are. But I remember when they started. I think it must have been end of the 90s when I saw the first one of those. But I could be wrong. But I know there has been like some really strict laws around that, and also there are laws around how the pharma representatives can actually go to the doctors, and how they're not even. I don't think they're even allowed to give out a pen. It's like not allowed to give out anything. Just simply because as a protection of the patient, basically. Because you have to remember one thing as well, and that is something that most people forget, is that most medical doctors are not scientists. They can be excellent at training patients, they can be excellent in their field, but they're often not trained to read scientific literature, and they can be really bad at statistics. So sometimes they can be really, like there are a lot of medical doctors that are also scientists, and excellent scientists. But a lot of GPs, they have no training in that, though how excellent they can be excellent in what they do. But they can be very susceptible to pharma representatives coming in, because they simply might not be able to very quickly make a judgment on what this person is saying. Is it true or not true? Are they exaggerating the studies? And also, come on, most GPs, they have like 14 patients an hour. I don't know. Yes. They have so many patients. On how on earth should they have the time to sit and read all these studies and do all that work? And somebody comes in and saying, okay, with this medication, you're going to make so many more patients happy. I understand. They say, okay, sure,
No,
fine, I'll get a nice pen.
Yeah, exactly. No, and that's pretty much what happens around here. And they're relying on the pharmaceutical sales rep to be giving them the information. And the pharmaceutical sales rep has no science background. They're just a salesperson. Yeah. So that's very interesting, though, that it's illegal where you are. That's fascinating to me.
That's sort of the pharma equivalent of making an avocado wolf meme, a flashy, nice business presentation of like for a medical doctor with a nice, easily digestible argument that a stressed person that possibly hasn't slept well and worked over hours for the past 14 years can understand, and they want to believe it because it's going to make their life easier. It's no real difference, It's just a fact that it doesn't spread across the globe within 2 hours,
Yeah.
Really quick, I know we need to start wrapping up here. One of the questions I was going to have too is that when you see a lot of the anti-science rhetoric that's out there, do you ever notice that it's from any specific part of the world, or does it just seem like it's everywhere? The reason why I'm asking is I wonder, is it a lot of it coming from America, or is it global? Is this a global thing? Like, it's an honest question, because I actually want to know.
It's a little bit hard for me to know. My site is visited by approximately, if I checked correctly yesterday, I think it's 55% US. So the US is overrepresented on the site. So obviously, if there are some wackos out there, then it's going to seem like it's all coming from the US, but it might just be because such a large proportion of the site is visited by Americans. So it's really hard for me to actually say. Yeah. But I think that I've been seeing pseudoscientist believers from all parts of the globe. And I think it's because it's just so human. If you're worried about your child, I mean, come on, if you have a child that is ill or something, you gave them vaccinations a week ago, and suddenly you realize that, okay, my God, this child is actually really ill now. It might be because of completely other reasons, but you are desperate. I mean, come on, it's your child. Obviously, you're going to react in a extremely agitated way. So you might start writing things on Facebook or whatnot. And that is so human. So, of course, it's going to be all over the world, I think. Then obviously some cultures, it might be better science education than others. And I think Sweden is very good with science education. So I think that from the Scandinavian countries, there's probably a large drop in the amount of strangeness coming, I think. Yeah. They tend to be a little bit more skeptical.
Yeah, I don't know if there's statistics on it or not, but it just feels like everyone's kicking our ass here. You know, I mean, we used to be innovative, and I just look around and I see everyone kicking our ass and things, and that's what I want to change, especially at least here in America. I mean, we're supposed to be this beacon of light to everybody, which is fine. I think, you know, but I don't think we're better than anybody else. I just think that like we should be, you know, the tide's rising all boats, and that's what I was hoping, but it doesn't feel like that's what's I feel like we're going backwards, and I just wondered if it's something that's being predominantly coming out of this country, because that's what it feels like. I don't know, and like I said, I don't have the statistics on it, but it just feels like when I look at the rest of the world that they take science much more serious than we do. They don't let religion and all these other things get in the way as much as we do. Like there's just so much political, and then the fact that we have a fucking conspiracy theorist fucking president. Good fucking Lord. Like of all this is the worst time in America for skeptics. I'm telling you right now, we're just like, good Lord, are we going to die? Like, because it's madness. It's, you know, but it is what it is, and that's why we're talking about it. So briefly, really quick, I know you got a video, you're doing some videos. You got your Dr. Anna's Imaginarium. You want to tell people a little bit about what that is and what you're doing there?
Okay, it's my outreach platform, Dr. Anna's Imaginarium. You can find me on Facebook. I also have a Twitter account that I am not brilliant at using, but I'm getting a little bit better at it. I have my blog. It's www.annazakrisson.com. That is completely incomprehensible for you and impossible to spell. So you probably see it in the post text. It's probably the dumbest idea I've ever had to use my actual name for my blog, but there you go. Now I'm stuck with it. So basically, what I'm doing there is I'm doing some mild debunking and a lot of sort of personal stories as well around science, and I like talking about sexuality because I think that female sexuality is really often not talked about a lot. So I'm being quite open and sometimes brutally honest about like disgusting things about my own body as well. I made a video about period farts, and there were some extreme. Awesome. It was like the reactions to that one was probably worse than people were extremely upset and about that. But anyway, so there you go. So that's basically what I do, and I think that this is also a way of emotionally, communicating with people, because it doesn't have to be pretty emotions all the time. You know, you can actually make people a little bit shocked at times as well, because that the message goes home that way as well.
Oh, totally. And you do a really good job at it.
Yeah.
So keep it up.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, and thank you for everything you're doing. Like I said, we just wanted to commend you for all the hard work and all the stuff you're doing. And I know how hard it is to get voices out there, and we just really want to see more people get at that. And hopefully this encourages other people and other scientists to get up and say, hey, look, this is something worth fighting for. Like this is something we need to be doing. There's value, there's benefit in doing it. And I don't want people to be afraid. As soon as you said that on there, like scientists feel afraid. I was like, fuck that. Whatever we got to fucking do to not get them to feel afraid to communicate and say something. This is not the fucking time to hide in a corner and to do something. No. We need you guys out there. Please, like, absolutely, please. Yeah. I don't want any more Donald Trump bullshit. Like, I just can't take it anymore. So,
yep. All
right. Well, that's the rest of our show. You got any final thoughts, Anna, that you'd like to tell anybody or say or direct to or?
Right now, I have a pretty blank brain.
Okay, no worries.
I think we've drained her.
For 1 hour.
No worries.
Got it.
Thank you so much for being here. We really do appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Anna.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys, that's our show for today. And like I said, we're going to have all the links and all the stuff in the description. So if you want to check out, her Facebook, the YouTube, all the stuff there, we'll have that there. And please do check it out. I think this is a great resource. And we're really proud that people like her are out there fighting for this kind of stuff. So,
absolutely.
And if this is your first time joining us, please subscribe, share, whatever you guys got to do. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/BenFamaJr. Mm-hmm. You can check out my YouTube channel, or you can just go to my website. You'll find all this stuff at benfamajr.com. Yeah. We will be off for the holidays. So this is our last show until the next year, because we're going to take some time off. It's your birthday. Star Wars is coming out, so we got to check that shit out, So, but anyways, we'll be back in the next year. So I hope you guys had a really great, happy holidays and have a great new year.
Yep.
Peace
Take
out.
Care. Bye.
You've been listening to Reality Trip with Ben Fama Jr. Check out more great content by visiting benfamajr.com.